A scream splits the blizzard-locked manor. He's dead! Stabbed in a room locked from inside! No footprints in the snow. No open window. A jewelled dagger buried in Lord Winters's heart. Ice melting on the hilt. Who killed him? His elegant wife, the jealous doctor, the pregnant secretary, the scarred valet, or the curse whispering through the walls, the icy darkness comes. Trapped by the storm, Hercule Poirot must solve the impossible murder before the killer strikes again. Chapter 1. The Blizzard's Embrace. The year was 1935, and the North Yorkshire moors lay buried beneath a shroud of white so profound that it seemed the very earth had been erased. Winters Manor, ancient, crenellated, and brooding, stood sentinel atop its hill like a black chess piece frozen mid-game. Its chimneys clawed at the low sky, exhaling plumes of smoke that were instantly devoured by the gale. Snow did not fall here. It attacked. It hurled itself in horizontal sheets against the leaded windows, drumming a frantic tattoo that drowned out all but the most resolute thoughts. Inside the entrance hall, a grandfather clock struck 8 with the solemnity of a funeral bell. The sound reverberated through marble corridors, past tapestries depicting long-dead Winter's ancestors, whose painted eyes seemed to follow every movement. The air carried the mingled scents of beeswax, wood smoke, and something sharper, ozone perhaps, or the metallic tang of fear. Hercule Poirot, diminutive and impeccably attired in a charcoal overcoat with astrakhan collar, stood before a roaring fire in the great hall. His patent leather shoes gleamed like obsidian. His moustache, waxed to symmetrical perfection, bristled with disapproval at the inclement weather. He had arrived only that afternoon, summoned by a cryptic telegram from Lord Archibald Winters. Urgent matter requiring utmost discretion. Blizzard forecast. Come at once. 8UW. Poirot disliked both haste and snow, yet curiosity and a certain professional vanity had compelled him. The other guests were already assembled, their silhouettes wavering in the firelight like suspects in a shadow play. Lady Evelyn Winters, the hostess, glided among them, with the brittle poise of a porcelain figurine. Tall, ash-blonde, and clad in emerald velvet that shimmered like frost on pine, she wore her 38 years with the elegance of a woman who had never known insecurity until tonight. Her smile was a fixed mask. Her sapphire eyes darted continually toward the study door at the far end of the hall. Dr. Harlan Frost, the family physician, stood apart near the window, a glass of whiskey trembling almost imperceptibly in his manicured hand. 50-ish, silver-haired, with the aquiline profile of a Renaissance poisoner, he stared into the storm as though it might offer absolution. His evening dress was immaculate, yet a faint smear of mud. Mud, in this weather, marred the cuff of his left sleeve. Miss Clara Beaumont, Lord Winter's private secretary, occupied a velvet chaise longue with the stillness of a coiled spring. 25, raven-haired, and possessed of a French mother's languid grace, she wore mourning black, though no death had yet been announced. Her fingers worried a lace handkerchief into shreds. Her gaze, when it flickered toward the study, held something darker than grief. Calculation, perhaps, or dread. The final figure was Victor Slade, the valet. He moved among the guests with the silent efficiency of a well-oiled automaton, refilling glasses, adjusting logs on the fire. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a livid scar bisecting his left cheek like a lightning bolt, he had the look of a man who had once been handsome and now cultivated menace. His livery was pristine, yet Poirot noted the bulge beneath the left armpit. A shoulder holster in an English country house conversation such as it was, limped along under the weight of unspoken tensions. Lady Evelyn spoke of the dreadful weather and the delicious pheasant served at dinner. Dr. Frost murmured agreement about the pheasant while staring fixedly at Clara. Clara herself said nothing at all. Victor Slade's contributions were limited to "Yes, m'lady," and "At once, sir." Poirot listened, observed, and catalogued. At precisely 8:17 p.m., Poirot would later verify the time against his pocket watch. The study door at the end of the hall opened with a sepulchral creak. Lord Archibald Winters emerged. He was a man carved from granite, 60 years old, 6 feet tall, with iron-grey hair and a jaw that could have served as a ship's prow. His dinner jacket strained across shoulders still powerful from decades of riding to hounds and crushing business rivals. Yet tonight, something was amiss. His complexion was the colour of old parchment. His eyes, pale blue, usually arctic, were bloodshot and fever-bright. In his right hand, he clutched a crystal tumbler half full of amber liquid. In his left, a jewelled dagger from his own collection, a 17th-century Italian stiletto with a hilt encrusted in sapphires and seed pearls. "Evelyn!" he barked, voice rough as gravel. "A word, in the study, now." Lady Evelyn's smile faltered. "Archibald, the guests, now." The room stilled. Even the fire seemed to hold its breath. Lady Evelyn set down her glass with a click that echoed like a gunshot. She crossed the hall with the dignity of a queen ascending the scaffold. Lord Winters stepped aside to let her pass, then followed, slamming the study door behind them. The key turned in the lock with a decisive snick. Silence descended, thick as the snow outside. Poirot's little grey cells began to stir. He noted the tremor in Lord Winters's hand as he locked the door. He noted the way Dr. Frost's knuckles whitened around his glass. He noted Clara Beaumont's sudden, sharp intake of breath, and the way Victor Slade's scar seemed to pulse like a living thing. Minutes crawled by. The clock ticked. The storm howled. At 8:29 the study door opened again. Lord Winters emerged alone, his face now the colour of candle wax. Without a word, he strode to the foot of the grand staircase and bellowed up into the shadows, "Slade! My medicine! Now!" The valet materialized as if conjured. "At once, my lord." He vanished toward the servants' corridor. Lord Winters turned to the assembled company. "Forgive the theatrics, a minor indisposition. Poirot, your reputation precedes you. I require your professional opinion. After dinner, the study, 10 o'clock sharp." His gaze swept the room like a searchlight, lingering on each face in turn. "Until then, no one leaves the manor. The roads are impassable. The telephone lines are down. We are isolated." He ascended the stairs with the laboured gait of a man carrying an invisible burden. The guests exchanged glances, some puzzled, some calculating, one, Poirot thought, openly terrified. Dinner was announced at 9. The pheasant was indeed delicious, though few had appetite. Conversation dwindled to whispers. At 9:47, Victor Slade reappeared, bearing a silver tray with a single crystal vial and a glass of water. He mounted the stairs without a word. At 9:52, a scream shattered the fragile calm. It was Lady Evelyn, unmistakable, even muffled by oak and stone. She burst from the study door, her emerald gown torn at the shoulder, her face a mask of horror. "Archibald!" she shrieked. He's dead! Stabbed! The door was locked! From the inside!" The company surged forward as one. Poirot, ever nimble, reached the study first. The door stood ajar. Inside, The scene was a tableau of violence, frozen in amber lamplight. Lord Archibald Winters lay sprawled across his mahogany desk, the jewelled dagger buried to the hilt in his chest. Blood had soaked through his white dress shirt in a widening crimson flower. His eyes stared sightlessly at the ceiling, where shadows danced like malevolent sprites. The room's single window was latched tight. Outside, the snow lay undisturbed in a pristine drift 6 feet deep. No footprints marred its surface. The fire in the grate had burned low, casting the only light, a hellish glow that turned the blood black. Poirot's gaze swept the room with clinical precision. The key was still in the lock, on the inside. A half-empty glass of whiskey stood beside the body. A single sheet of heavy cream notepaper lay beneath the Lord's outstretched hand, bearing a scrawled message in his own spidery hand. "The icy darkness comes for us all." Dr. Frost pushed past, kneeling to examine the corpse. "Dead less than 15 minutes, he pronounced, voice unsteady. "The blade pierced the heart. Instantaneous." Clara Beaumont swayed, clutching the doorframe. "But the door was locked. We heard him lock it after Evelyn left. And the window—" "Impossible!" Victor Slade growled from the threshold. "No, one could have entered or left." Poirot stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. "Impossible, non, mes amis. Merely improbable. And Hercule Poirot does not believe in the impossible." He knelt beside the body, gloved fingers hovering over the dagger's hilt. A faint sheen of moisture glistened there. Melted ice in the hearth. A poker lay askew, its tip blackened and wet. On the Persian rug, a single droplet of water traced a path toward the window, and stopped. Outside, the blizzard redoubled its fury, as though the very elements conspired to bury the truth. Inside, 5 souls stood trapped with a corpse, a locked room, and a killer who had vanished like smoke. Poirot straightened, his eyes glittering. "The game, mesdames et messieurs, has begun, and in the icy darkness, the little grey cells shall prevail." Somewhere in the manor, a clock began to chime the hour. 10 slow, mournful strokes that sounded for all the world like a death knell. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Snow. The study door hung open like the mouth of a tomb. Beyond it, the blizzard hurled itself against the manor with the fury of a living thing, rattling the window panes in their leaded frames. Inside, the air was thick with the copper reek of blood and the sharper bite of fear. The fire had sunk to sullen embers. Shadows pooled in the corners like spilled ink. Hercule Poirot stood motionless at the threshold, his small, neat figure a dark exclamation mark against the chaos. His eyes, green as absinthe, moved with the precision of a watchmaker's tweezers. First, the body, Lord Archibald Winters, sprawled across the desk as though felled by an invisible axe. The jewelled dagger protruded from his chest at a perfect right angle, the sapphires winking malevolently in the lamplight. Blood had soaked through the starched shirt front, pooling beneath the right arm, in a dark lake that reflected the ceiling's carved roses. The Lord's left hand still clutched the crumpled sheet of notepaper. The right lay open, fingers curled as if grasping at some final, unattainable truth. Poirot's gaze travelled upward. The ceiling was intact, no trapdoors, no dangling ropes. The walls, oak-panelled, hung with portraits of stern Winter's patriarchs whose eyes seemed to follow him with ancestral disapproval. The window latched from within, the snow outside a seamless white curtain. No footprints, no disturbance. The floor, a single droplet of water, perfectly round, glistened on the Persian rug 3 feet from the desk. It had not been there when Poirot first entered. He knelt, gloved finger hovering. The droplet was already shrinking, its edges feathering into the wool. Melted ice. But from where the hearth poker lay askew, its tip blackened and wet. Poirot's moustache twitched. He straightened, turning to the assembled company framed in the doorway like actors awaiting their cue. Lady Evelyn Winters stood foremost, one hand pressed to her throat, as though to staunch an invisible wound. Her emerald gown was torn at the shoulder. A thin line of blood, her own, traced the pale column of her neck. Dr. Harlan Frost hovered behind her, his medical bag clutched like a talisman. Miss Clara Beaumont had sunk onto a velvet settee, her face the colour of candle wax. Victor Slade loomed at the rear, his scarred cheek livid in the firelight, eyes fixed on the corpse with an expression Poirot could not yet decipher. Grief, triumph, calculation. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot said softly, "we shall proceed with order. Dr. Frost, if you please, the examination." Frost startled as though prodded. He stepped forward, knees creaking, and knelt beside the body. His fingers, long, pale, surgeon-steady, probed the wound. "The blade entered between the 4th and 5th ribs," he murmured, "pierced the heart. Death instantaneous, or very nearly so. Time, between 9:45 and 9:55, I should say." He glanced at the mantel clock, 10:03. "Rigour has not yet begun." Poirot nodded. "And the door, madame?" He turned to Lady Evelyn. "You say it was locked from within?" She swallowed. "Yes, after our quarrel. Archibald was—" Her voice cracked. "He was agitated, said he needed to be alone. I heard the key turn. Then nothing, until I returned with his medicine." Her gaze flickered to Slade, who stood impassive. "Victor brought the vial at 9:52. I knocked. No answer. I used my key, the duplicate, and found him, like this." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Your key, madame?" "There are duplicates. Only mine," she said quickly. "And Archibald's. The staff have none. Yet the key remains in the lock, on the inside." Poirot gestured. "And the window is latched. No disturbance in the snow. Curious." Clara Beaumont spoke for the first time, her voice a thread. "The passage. There's an old servants' corridor behind the panelling. My lord showed it to me once. Said it was for emergencies." She flushed under Poirot's scrutiny. "I never used it." Victor Slade's scar twitched. "That passage was bricked up 20 years ago, miss, after the old lord's accident." His tone was flat, but Poirot caught the undercurrent, warning. The detective moved to the window. The latch was stiff with disuse. When he forced it, the casement groaned open. A blast of icy air swept in, extinguishing the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. For a heartbeat, only the fire's glow remained. Then Slade relit the lamp with a spill from the hearth. Outside, the snow was a wall of white, 6 feet deep against the sill, undisturbed save for a single, shallow depression directly beneath the window. A saucer-shaped hollow, no larger than a dinner plate. Poirot leaned out, breath fogging. The hollow was already filling with fresh flakes. A footprint, no, too small, too round. He closed the window, latching it with deliberate care. "Doctor," he said, "they got a dagger. You recognize it?" Frost nodded. "From his lordship's collection. Italian 17th century. He kept it on the desk for letter opening." He hesitated. "The blade is unusually sharp, and there's something on the hilt." He pointed. A faint crystalline residue glittered like frost. "Ice or salt," Poirot murmured, "to prevent the blood from clotting too quickly. No, that is not it." He produced a clean handkerchief, dabbing at the residue. It dissolved instantly. "Water, recently melted," Lady Evelyn swayed. "But how the fire was lit, the room was warm." "Precisely, madame. warm enough to melt ice, but not to evaporate it completely. Poirot's gaze swept the room. Someone brought ice into this room recently, and someone removed it after the murder. Clara's handkerchief shredded entirely in her fingers. You're saying the killer was here with him? Or entered after, Poirot said. The locked door is a problem, yes, but doors may be locked from without, with the key removed. Windows may be latched from without with a string, and ice? He smiled faintly. Ice melts. Slade shifted. Begging your pardon, sir, but the master locked that door himself. We all heard it. And the only other key is, he stopped. Is where, monsieur? The valet's jaw worked. In the safe, behind the portrait of the first Baron, combination known only to his lordship and Lady Evelyn. All eyes turned to her. She lifted her chin. I have not opened the safe in months. Archibald changed the combination after... She bit her lip. After a disagreement. Poirot's moustache quivered with satisfaction. Then we shall open it, but first the note. He plucked the crumpled paper from the dead man's hand. The ink was fresh, the handwriting unmistakable. The icy darkness comes for us all. Beneath it, a single fingerprint in blood, not the victim's. Whose print is this? Poirot demanded. Frost examined it. Too smudged, but the angle suggests a woman's hand, or a small man's. Clara shrank back. Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed. Absurd! I touched nothing. Poirot folded the note carefully. We shall see. Now, the medicine. He turned to Slade. You brought the vial at 9:52. Yes, sir. From the dispensary. Laudanum and digitalis, as prescribed. I left it on the tray outside the door. And you saw no one. No, sir. The scar pulsed. But I heard something, a whisper, like breathing behind the walls. Frost snorted. The wind, man. These old houses creak. Or the passage, Clara insisted. It runs behind the study. I felt a draught once, when his lordship was dictating. Poirot moved to the panelling. His knuckles rapped. Thump, thump, hollow. A section swung inward on concealed hinges, revealing a narrow corridor choked with dust and cobwebs. The air within was frigid, as though the storm itself had taken residence. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. The passage is open. Slade's face darkened. I told you, bricked up. Yet here it stands. Poirot produced a pocket torch, its beam cutting through the gloom. The corridor stretched left and right, floorboards warped with age. At the juncture, a single footprint barefoot, pressed into the dust, small, delicate, leading toward the study. Clara gasped. That's impossible. No one's used this in years. Poirot knelt. The print was fresh, the dust around it undisturbed. Someone has, recently, and they were in haste. See the smudging at the heel. He straightened. We shall follow, but first, the safe. Lady Evelyn led them to the portrait. Her fingers trembled as she spun the dial. 170335, the year of their marriage. The safe clicked open. Inside, documents, a revolver, and a small velvet pouch, empty. The key, she whispered. It's gone. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Then the killer has it. Or had it. Frost examined the safe's interior. No prints, wiped clean. Outside, the wind screamed, a sound almost human. Inside, the temperature seemed to plummet. The fire sputtered, the lamp flickered, and from the depths of the passage came a sound, a soft, deliberate scrape, as of something being dragged across wood. Poirot whirled. Who is there? Silence. Then, from the corridor's darkness, a single snowflake drifted out. Impossible, yet there it was, melting on the study rug beside the droplet of water. The detective's voice was steel. The game escalates. The killer is not finished, and the icy darkness, it watches. Somewhere in the manor, a clock began to chime. 11 slow strokes that echoed like footsteps in the snow. Chapter 3. Motives unveiled. The drawing-room fire had sunk to a sullen crimson heart, its embers pulsing like a dying star. Outside, the blizzard had settled into a steady malevolent hiss, as though the snow itself were whispering secrets against the panes. Inside, the 5 survivors arranged themselves in a loose circle of gilt chairs and velvet settees, each face lit by the uncertain glow of a single branch of candles. The air was thick with beeswax, brandy, and the lingering iron scent of blood that no amount of lavender water could mask. Hercule Poirot stood at the mantel, small and immaculate, his patent leather shoes planted with the precision of a chess master. His green eyes moved from face to face, cataloguing every tremor, every flicker of eyelid, every bead of sweat that dared to form despite the chill. The little Belgian had removed his overcoat. Beneath it, his evening dress was flawless, the white tie a perfect geometric knot. Only the faintest quiver of his moustache betrayed the activity of the little grey cells beneath. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, voice soft yet carrying to the furthest corner, "we find ourselves in the classic position of the huis clos, the closed house. A murder has been committed. The doors are locked, the windows sealed, the telephone wires severed by the storm. We are marooned upon an island of snow, and upon this island walks a murderer. It is therefore necessary, indispensable, that we establish, with clarity and without sentiment, the motives that might drive one human being to extinguish another." He paused, letting the silence stretch until it snapped like a violin string. Lord Archibald Winters was not a man universally beloved. No, he was a man who collected enemies the way other men collect stamps, systematically with pride and with a certain ruthless pleasure. We shall begin with the most obvious, l'argent, money. Lady Evelyn Winters sat ramrod straight in a high-backed chair, her emerald gown now hidden beneath a black cashmere shawl. The candlelight caught the diamond clips in her hair, turning them into chips of ice. She lifted her chin. "If you imply that I killed my husband for his fortune, Monsieur Poirot, you are mistaken. The Winters estate is entailed. Upon Archibald's death, it passes to a distant cousin in Canada, a man I have never met. I receive only the dower house and a modest jointure." Poirot inclined his head. "Modest, Madame, £20,000 per annum is modest." Her lips thinned. "Compared to the millions Archibald controlled through his companies, yes, but there is more." She hesitated, then drew a folded document from her reticule. "3 weeks ago, he showed me a new will. If I were proven unfaithful, I would receive nothing, not even the dower house. He had photographs, taken by a private inquiry agent. Dr. Frost and I." She glanced at the physician, who stood rigidly by the window, his back to the room. "We were indiscreet." Dr. Harlan Frost turned slowly. The candlelight carved deep hollows beneath his cheekbones. "Archibald was my oldest friend," he said, voice hollow. "We were at Harrow together. He financed my first clinic, but when he discovered Evelyn and me, he withdrew the funding, threatened to ruin my practice, exposure in the Lancet, blackballing at the Royal College." He laughed, a brittle sound. He had a phrase for it, commercial euthanasia. Said he would bury me professionally before I ever touched a scalpel again. Poirot's eyes glittered. "And yet, Doctor, you dined with him tonight. You drank his wine. You examined his corpse with every appearance of solicitude. A remarkable performance." Frost's hand went to his breast pocket, then fell away. "I am a physician, monsieur. The habit of detachment is ingrained. Or the habit of deception," Poirot murmured. He turned to Clara Beaumont. The secretary had drawn her knees up beneath her black skirt, making herself small upon the settee. Her dark hair had come unpinned. It fell in a silken curtain across one cheek. "I was his lordship's employee," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing more." Poirot's smile was gentle, deadly. "Come, mademoiselle. You were 25. He was 60. You shared late nights over ledgers, dictation in the library until dawn. You wore mourning black before his death. And in the study, we found letters, billets doux in your handwriting, promises of marriage, promises of a villa in Capri, promises he had no intention of keeping." Clara's head snapped up. "He did intend it. He said—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "He changed his mind. Said I was a distraction, a temporary distraction. Then he laughed. Said I should be grateful for the experience." Her fingers twisted in her lap. "There was a child. Lost last spring. He paid for the doctor. Paid for my silence. Paid for everything except respect." The room stilled. Even the fire seemed to listen. Victor Slade, who had been standing statue still beside the door, spoke for the first time. His voice was gravel. "The master ruined my father 20 years ago. Slade Sr. was his lordship's factor, handled the estate accounts, a discrepancy of £5,000. His lordship called it embezzlement. My father hanged himself in the stable loft. I was 14, been in service here ever since, watching, waiting. His lordship liked to remind me. Said blood will tell. Said I'd steal the silver one day, just like my dad." He reached into his pocket and drew out a small, worn photograph. A younger Slade, arm around a smiling man in a tweed cap. "Found this in the master's desk last week. He'd kept it. Trophy." Poirot took the photograph, studied it, returned it. "And tonight, Monsieur Slade, you brought the medicine tray to the study door at 9:52. You heard nothing, saw nothing." Slade's scar twitched. "Heard the lock turn. Heard him moving about. Then nothing. I left the tray and went below stairs. Yet the passage behind the panelling," Poirot gestured toward the study, "was used. A barefoot print in the dust. Size 7, perhaps. A woman's foot, or a small man's." Slade's eyes flicked to Clara's kid slippers, then away. "I wear a 10, sir, and I don't go barefoot." Lady Evelyn rose abruptly. "This is intolerable. We are not criminals to be interrogated like common thieves." Poirot raised a hand. "Madame, we are all criminals tonight until proven otherwise. But let us proceed with the evidence, not emotion." He produced the blood-stained note from his pocket. "The icy darkness comes for us all. Written in Lord Winters's hand, yet the fingerprint in blood is not his. Dr. Frost believes it a woman's, or a small man's." He laid the note upon the occasional table. "Now, the will. Lady Evelyn has spoken of the Canadian cousin, but there is another document discovered in the safe." He drew out a second sheet, heavier vellum, sealed with red wax. "Dated yesterday. Witnessed by Dr. Frost and Miss Beaumont. It bequeaths the unentailed fortune, some £3 million, to a guest trust. The trustee Miss Clara Beaumont. The beneficiary a child to be born within the year. Should the child not survive—" He let the silence finish the sentence. Clara's face drained of colour. "I knew nothing of this." Frost stared at her. "You signed it, girl. I thought it was a codicil for the clinic." He said. Poirot interrupted. "The plot thickens. We have jealousy, greed, revenge, and the oldest motive of all, love betrayed. But there is more." He moved to the fireplace, where the poker still lay askew. This implement was used to create the icy trail on the study rug. Snow brought in from the windowsill, melted deliberately to suggest an external intruder. A red herring, as the English say. But the snow was not taken from the sill outside the study window. That remains undisturbed. It was taken from another window, the one in the passage. Someone opened it, scooped snow into a container, a silver bowl perhaps, carried it through the passage, spilled a trail, then removed the bowl. The footprint tells us they were in haste. He turned to face them. Now, the locked door. A simple matter. The killer entered through the passage, stabbed Lord Winters while he sat at his desk. Note the angle of the wound, from above and slightly to the left, consistent with a right-handed assailant standing behind the chair. The victim was drugged first, laudanum in the whiskey, administered at dinner. Dr. Frost's prescription. The digitalis was a blind. The killer then locked the door from the inside, exited through the passage, and relocked the study door from the outside using the duplicate key, taken from the safe earlier in the evening. Lady Evelyn gasped. But the key was in the lock. No, madame. The key was returned to the lock after the murderer left. A string through the keyhole. The key turned. The string pulled free. A child's trick, but effective. Frost's voice was hoarse, and the ice on the dagger hilt, from the same snow to obscure fingerprints. But the killer overlooked one thing. Poirot produced a tiny glass vial from his waistcoat pocket. This was found in the passage, caught in a cobweb. Laudanum, the same batch as on the medicine tray. But the tray held 2 vials. One is missing. Slade's hand moved toward his pocket. Poirot's voice cracked like a whip. Do not trouble yourself, monsieur. The police will arrive with the dawn. The telephone lines may be down, but the village constable has a wireless set. They will find the second vial in your quarters, I think, along with the silver bowl from the pantry, still damp. Slade froze. You're guessing. No, I am deducing. The barefoot print yours, monsieur. You removed your shoes to move silently through the passage. The size 7 is a deception. You wear a thick sock, the scar on your cheek. A distraction. You were seen by the kitchen maid at 9:47 going to the pantry. You took the bowl then. Was you returned at 9:52 with the tray, after the murder? You heard nothing because you committed the crime. Clara began to sob. Lady Evelyn stared at Slade as though seeing him for the first time. Frost took a step backward, colliding with the window. Poirot continued, relentless. Your motive, not just revenge for your father. Lord Winters discovered your plan. You had been siphoning funds for years. Small amounts, unnoticeable until the annual audit. He confronted you this afternoon, threatened to turn you over to the police. You saw the new will, knew Miss Beaumont would inherit everything. You acted to protect your theft and your freedom. He turned to the others. But there is a complication. The fingerprint in blood on the note, not Monsieur Slade's. His hands are too large. Someone else touched that paper after the murder. Someone who wished to implicate Miss Beaumont. Silence fell, broken only by the wind. Poirot's gaze settled on Dr. Frost. You, Doctor. You examined the body. You adjusted the note to ensure the print was visible. You hoped to cast suspicion on the girl, and away from your own embezzlement of clinic funds. 2 crimes, 2 criminals, 1 murder. Frost's face crumpled. The candles guttered. The fire hissed. And from the passage beyond the study came the unmistakable sound of a door closing. Softly, deliberately. Poirot smiled. The accomplice returns, but the little grey cells are faster than footsteps in the snow. The clock struck midnight. 12 chimes, each one a nail in a coffin of lies. Chapter 4. The Phantom Footprints. The drawing-room candles had burned low, their flames trembling like frightened children. Outside, the blizzard had entered a new phase. No longer a wild assault, but a patient, inexorable burial. Snow pressed against the windows in thick, opaque slabs, erasing the world beyond the manor walls. Inside, the air was heavy with the mingled scents of melted wax, cold stone, and the faint, persistent iron of blood that seemed to have seeped into the very grain of the oak. Hercule Poirot stood at the French doors that opened onto the terrace, his small figure silhouetted against the white void. He had donned his overcoat again, the astrakhan collar turned up against the draught that sneaked through every crack. In his gloved hand, he held a silver-headed walking stick, borrowed from the umbrella stand in the hall, and with it he now traced a deliberate line in the frost that had formed on the inside of the glass. "Observe," he said, not turning. "The temperature in this room has fallen 4 degrees since midnight. The fire is adequate, the doors are closed, yet the frost grows. Why?" No one answered. Lady Evelyn sat rigid in her chair, the black shawl clutched like a shield. Dr. Harlan Frost stood by the mantel, his medical bag at his feet, his face the colour of old parchment. Clara Beaumont had curled into the corner of the settee, her knees drawn up, her eyes fixed on the carpet as though it might open and swallow her. Victor Slade remained by the door, his scarred cheek twitching in rhythm with some inner metronome. The silence stretched, taut as a garrote. Poirot turned. "Because, mes amis, the cold is not merely outside. It is inside. It walks with us. It leaves its mark." He gestured with the stick toward the study door, still ajar. "The phantom footprints in the passage, they are not the only ones. There are others. Here," he moved with the precision of a dancer, crossing to the Persian rug before the fireplace. Kneeling, he brushed aside a scatter of ash. Beneath it, a faint circular depression marred the pile, perfectly round, no larger than a saucer. Around it, the wool was damp. "Snow," he said simply, "brought in on a boot, or a shoe, or—" his gaze flicked to Clara's kid slippers, then to Slade's polished Oxfords. "A bare foot." Slade's scar pulsed. "I told you, I wear a 10. "And yet," Poirot continued, "the print in the passage was a 7, a deception, but this," he indicated the circle, "this is the truth. Someone stood here, after the murder, and the snow melted from their soul. The question is, why here?" He rose, moving to the French doors. With a decisive twist, he unlatched them. A blast of Arctic air swept in, snuffing 2 candles. Snow swirled across the threshold in a miniature blizzard. Poirot stepped out onto the terrace, the others following reluctantly. The terrace was a white plain, unbroken save for a single set of footprints leading from the doors to the balustrade, and then stopping. The prints were deep, the tread marks of a man's boot, size 10. They ended abruptly at the stone railing, as though the walker had simply vanished into the night. "Impossible," Frost whispered. "Non," Poirot corrected, "merely staged." He knelt by the final print. "See the edge, crushed snow, packed hard. Someone stood here, backward, pressing their heel into the drift. Then they walked forward along their own prints, retracing their steps to the door. A simple trick, but it requires preparation and a container." He reached into the snowdrift beside the railing and withdrew a silver bowl, pantry issue, monogrammed with the winter's crest. Inside, a thin layer of ice glistened. The snow was scooped here, carried inside, spilled in the study to create the icy trail. The bowl was then returned, after the footprints were made. Lady Evelyn's voice was a thread. "But the study window was never opened," Poirot finished. "The snow came from this terrace. The passage connects to a door at the far end, near the old laundry. Someone entered there, carried the bowl through the passage, spilled the trail, stabbed Lord Winters, locked the door with the string trick, and exited the same way. The footprints on the terrace were made later, to suggest an external intruder. He led them back inside, relatching the doors. The cold lingered, a living presence. But there is more. The barefoot print in the passage, it was not Slade's. His feet are too large. It was a woman's foot, or a child's. His gaze settled on Clara. You, mademoiselle, wear a size 5. Clara's eyes widened. I was in my room. I never— No, Poirot interrupted gently. You were not. The kitchen maid saw you descend the back stairs at 9:43. You were barefoot. Your slippers were wet from the gardens earlier. You went to the passage. You waited. She began to tremble. He summoned me. A note under my door said he had changed his mind about the child, about us. I went. The passage was dark. I heard voices, arguing, then a thud. I fled. Poirot produced a scrap of paper from his pocket. This note in Lord Winters's hand. She nodded, tears spilling. I burned it in the kitchen stove. Yet the ashes remain. He held up a fragment. Meet me in the passage, 9:45. A. You were to be the scapegoat. The barefoot print, the letters in the study, all to implicate you. Frost's voice was hoarse. Then who? The lights flickered. The candles guttered. And from the passage came a sound, a soft, deliberate scrape, as of something heavy being dragged across wood. Poirot whirled. The killer returns to erase evidence. Vite! He led the charge into the study. The room was as they had left it, the body still sprawled, the dagger glinting. But the rug had been rolled back, revealing a trapdoor in the floorboards. It stood open, a black moor. A rope ladder descended into darkness. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. The cellar, the true passage. They descended single file, Poirot first, torchbeam cutting through the gloom. The cellar was vast, vaulted, lined with wine racks and forgotten furniture. The air was frigid, the floor thick with dust, save for a single path of disturbed prints leading to a far door. The prints were barefoot, size 5, and they ended at a small crumpled heap. Clara's scream echoed. It was a child's shoe, tiny patent leather monogrammed C.B. Poirot knelt. Not a child, a decoy. The killer wore these over their own feet to create the smaller prints, then discarded them here. He lifted the shoe. Inside, a scrap of paper. The icy darkness hungers. Frost snatched it. This is madness. Archibald was paranoid, saw conspiracies everywhere. He spoke of a family curse, ancestors betrayed in the Arctic. Non, Poirot cut in. The curse is greed, and it walks on 2 legs. He moved to the far door. It opened onto a narrow staircase spiralling upward, into the manor's west wing. This leads to the old nursery. Abandoned since the last winter's child died in 1897, the killer used it as a base. They climbed. The nursery was a frozen tableau. Rocking horse coated in frost. Dolls with porcelain faces cracked by cold. In the centre, a circle of melted snow surrounded Ischer's silver candlestick, the missing bowl's twin. And on the floor, a single drop of blood, still wet. Poirot's torchbeam caught something glinting in the shadows. A woman's pearl earring, torn from its setting. Lady Evelyn's hand flew to her ear. One earring missing. You were here, madame, Poirot said softly. After the murder, you came to retrieve something, the photographs. She backed away. I don't. The string trick required 2 people, Poirot continued. One to stab, one to lock the door from outside. Slade provided the muscle. You provided the key and the motive. The photographs were in the nursery safe. You retrieved them after the murder, but lost an earring in haste. Slade lunged. You lying! Poirot sidestepped. The barefoot print's yours, madame, in the child's shoes. You are a size 6, close enough. The circle on the drawing-room rug. Your boot, after you returned the bowl. The note under Clara's door. Your handwriting, forged to imitate his lordship's. Lady Evelyn's face twisted. He was going to ruin me. The Canadian cousin would have sold everything. I'd have nothing. Frost stared at her. You used me. The clinic funds. Collateral, she spat. Archibald was cutting everyone off. We all had reason. Poirot's voice was steel. But only you had access to the nursery. Only you knew the combination to the photograph safe. Only you could forge the note to lure Clara as a witness. The wind howled through a cracked window. Snow drifted in, settling on the dolls' faces like tears. Poirot turned to Slade. And you, monsieur, you carried the body's weight when the trapdoor was opened. Your shoulder, there, the bruise from the rope ladder. Slade's hand went to his arm. The lights flickered again. The candlestick toppled, and from the nursery wardrobe came a soft, childlike giggle. Poirot's torch beam swung. The wardrobe door creaked open. Inside, a small figure in a white nightgown stood. A child, no, a dwarf, or a child's mannequin, dressed and posed. Its porcelain face smiled vacantly. In its hand a jewelled dagger, the twin of the murder weapon. Mon Dieu, Poirot whispered, the final red herring, the curse made flesh. Lady Evelyn laughed. Hi, brittle. You see, the icy darkness is real. It lives in these walls. Poirot's eyes narrowed. No, madam. It lives in the human heart, and tonight it has been unmasked. The clock in the hall struck 1. 13 chimes, unlucky for some. Chapter 5. Whispers of the Past. The nursery door shut behind them with the finality of a coffin lid. The single bulb overhead, swung on its frayed cord, flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting a sickly yellow glow over the frozen tableau. Snow sifted through the cracked window pane in lazy spirals, settling on the rocking horse's moth-eaten mane, on the porcelain doll's staring eyes, on the small white nightgown of the mannequin that had giggled like a living child. The air was so cold it burned the lungs. Hercule Poirot stood in the centre of the circle of melted snow. His overcoat unbuttoned now. The astrakhan collar turned down. In his gloved hand he held the twin dagger, its sapphires dark as frozen blood. He turned it slowly, watching the light fracture across the blade. Observe, he said, voice low, how perfectly it matches the murder weapon. Same maker, same era, same flaw in the hilt where the gold leaf has worn away. Yet this one is clean, untouched by blood. A prop, mes amis. A stage dagger for a stage curse. Lady Evelyn Winters pressed herself against the wallpaper. Faded roses on a field of ice blue, as though she might melt into it. Dr. Harlan Frost stood rigid beside the wardrobe, his medical bag clutched like a rosary. Clara Beaumont had sunk to the floor, knees drawn up, her black skirt pooling around her like spilled ink. Victor Slade loomed in the doorway, his scarred face unreadable, the bruise on his shoulder now a livid purple in the bulb's glare. Poirot laid the dagger on the nursery table beside its mate, the real one, still crusted with Lord Winter's blood, retrieved from the study. The two blades lay parallel, inches apart, yet separated by a chasm of intent. The icy darkness, Poirot murmured, a phrase repeated thrice tonight, on the note, on the scrap in the child's shoe, carved into the nursery windowsill. See. He traced the letters with a gloved finger. I.D. Not a curse, an acronym, inheritance denied, Lord Winters's private joke. He used it in his ledgers to mark assets he intended to withhold from heirs. The Canadian cousin, Lady Evelyn, Miss Beaumont, even the clinic, all marked I.D. in red ink. He produced a small leather-bound ledger from his pocket, taken from the study safe. Page after page, millions frozen, and at the back, a final entry dated yesterday, I.D. C.B., full restitution upon proof of child. The child that was lost, the child Clara believed abandoned, The child Lord Winters intended to acknowledge after disinheriting everyone else. Clara's sob was a small, broken thing. He told me it was over, that I was a mistake. No, mademoiselle. He told you what he wished you to believe, to keep you silent until the new will was signed, but someone discovered the truth. Poirot's gaze swept the room. Someone who stood to lose everything. Lady Evelyn's voice was a hiss. You cannot prove, I can prove much. Poirot moved to the nursery safe. A small brass-fronted box set into the wall behind a faded sampler. The combination was the same as the study. 170335. It clicked open. Inside, a stack of photographs, a bundle of letters tied with black ribbon, and a single sheet of vellum, the original will, witnessed by Frost and Clara, but unsigned. Archibald never signed it, Poirot said. He intended to tomorrow, with a solicitor snowbound in the village. Until then, the photographs were his insurance. Proof of the affair, proof of embezzlement, proof of Clara's pregnancy, all here. He lifted the photographs, grainy images of Lady Evelyn and Dr. Frost in a London hotel, of Frost forging clinic receipts, of Clara leaving a Harley Street surgery, hand on her abdomen. Frost lunged for the safe. Slade caught his arm, twisting it behind his back. Easy, doctor. The game's up. Poirot continued, relentless. The plan was elegant. Slade would kill Lord Winters, revenge for his father, and a fat bribe from Lady Evelyn. She would retrieve the photographs, destroy the will, and inherit as the grieving widow. The barefoot prints, the child's shoes, the mannequin, all to suggest a supernatural curse. The icy darkness as misdirection. Clara as scapegoat. The terrace footprints to imply an outside killer. But the little grey cells, they do not lie, he turned to Clara. You were summoned to the passage at 9:45 to witness the argument, Slade and Lord Winters, staged for your benefit. You fled when the thud came, the body falling, but you left something behind. He produced a lace handkerchief, monogrammed CB, stained with melted snow. Found in the passage, you dropped it in panic. Clara stared at it as though it were a snake. I didn't kill him. No, you were the witness intended to hang. Lady Evelyn laughed. High, brittle, edging toward madness. You think you've won, little man. The storm has buried the roads. The telephone is dead. By morning, the evidence will be ash in the nursery grate, and you, she lunged for the dagger on the table. Poirot was faster. He caught her wrist, twisting until the blade clattered to the floor. Madame, your performance is admirable, but the curtain falls. Frost sagged in Slade's grip. It was her idea, all of it. She said Archibald was cutting me off, said we'd lose everything. The clinic, the house, the life we planned. She forged the note to Clara. She wore the child's shoes. I only provided the laudanum. Slade's scar twisted. And I was the fool, thought I'd get justice for my dad. She promised me £10,000, said the photographs would ruin her if they surfaced. I carried the bowl, made the footprints, posed the mannequin. But when I saw the new will, he shook his head. She never intended to pay, planned to pin it all on me. Poirot released Lady Evelyn's wrist. She crumpled to the floor, the black shawl pooling around her like spilled ink. The string trick, he said, a collaboration. Slade stabbed from behind the chair. Right-handed, the wound angle matches his height. Lady Evelyn waited in the passage, locked the door from outside with the duplicate key, pulled the string free. She then returned the key to the safe, retrieved the photographs, and staged the nursery scene. The giggle a gramophone recording, triggered by a tripwire. The snowflake in the study blown through a bellows from the passage. He moved to the window. The storm was easing. The snow fell in fat, lazy flakes now. But the little details betray. The child's shoes, too small for Slade, too large for Clara, perfect for Lady Evelyn's narrow foot. The earring lost in haste, the ledger entry in red ink ID, visible only under magnifying glass. The twin dagger, kept here to suggest a second killer. All threads in a tapestry of deceit. Clara rose slowly, and the whisper, the one Slade heard. Poirot smiled faintly. The wind through the old speaking tubes. Lady Evelyn's voice, distorted. The icy darkness comes. A recording, played from the nursery to the study via the tube behind the fireplace. The same tube used to ventriloquize during the séance you proposed, Doctor, to contact the spirit. Frost's face crumpled. I thought it would buy time, confuse the police. Instead, it confused only yourselves. Poirot turned to the mannequin. He lifted its nightgown. Beneath, a small gramophone horn still warm. The final act, but the audience is wiser. The bulb flickered. The rocking horse creaked, though no wind stirred it. And from the wardrobe came a soft, childlike sigh. Poirot's torch beam swung. The mannequin's head had turned, impossibly, its porcelain smile now a leer. A thin wire glinted from its neck to the ceiling. A booby-trap, Poirot said, set to trigger when the wardrobe was opened again. A weight, a wire, a blade, intended for the next person to search here. Perhaps Clara, perhaps me. He severed the wire with the dagger. The head lolled, harmless. Lady Evelyn began to laugh. Softly at first, then louder, until the sound filled the nursery like shattering glass. You think you've won? The darkness is real. It's in the walls, in the blood. My great-grandfather froze to death in the Arctic, betrayed by his partner. His last words, the icy darkness comes. It's cursed us all. Poirot knelt beside her. No, madame, the curse is greed, and tonight it thaws. He stood. The police will come with the dawn. The village constable has a sled team. The evidence is preserved. Photographs, ledger, daggers, gramophone. The little grey cells have spoken. The clock in the hall struck 2. 14 chimes. The hour of reckoning. Outside, the snow had stopped. The moon emerged cold and bright, turning the manor into a palace of ice. Inside, the nursery stood silent, the doll's eyes reflecting the first pale light of truth. Chapter 6. Fractured Alibis. The nursery bulb died with a soft pop. Darkness swallowed them whole, broken only by the thin blade of moonlight slicing through the cracked window. For 3 heartbeats no one moved. Then Poirot's pocket torch clicked on, its beam a white scalpel cutting the gloom. Remain still, he ordered. The killer has cut the wire to the nursery, but the main fuse is in. The cellar. Vite. They descended the spiral staircase single file, torchlight jittering across stone walls slick with frost. The cellar air struck like a slap, colder even than the nursery, thick with the smell of coal dust and old wine. Poirot's beam swept the fuse box. The nursery feed had been severed with wire cutters, the ends bright and fresh. Someone wished us blind, he murmured, but the little grey cells require no light. Back upstairs, he reassembled them in the drawing room. The fire had burned to embers, frost spiderwebbed the windows. Poirot relit the candles with a spill, then stood before the mantel like a judge. Alibis, he said. They are the crutches of the guilty. Let us break them. He began with Victor Slade. You claim you were below stairs from 9:52 until the scream at 9:58. Yet the kitchen maid saw you leave the pantry at 9:47 with the silver bowl. You returned at 9:53 after the murder. Your sister the maid lied to protect you. But the bowl was found on the terrace, still iced. You carried it there after staging the footprints. Your alibi fractures. Slade's scar twitched. I told you, Lady Evelyn, patience. Poirot turned to Clara. You say you were in your room. Yet the back stairs creaked at 9:43. Your slippers were damp. Garden dew, not snow. You went to the passage at 9:45, summoned by the forged note. You heard the argument, the thud fled at 9:50. You were never in the study, but you were in the passage. Your alibi collapses. Clara's hands twisted. I didn't kill him. No, but you were the witness meant to hang. Poirot faced Frost. Doctor, you dined with the victim. You prescribed laudanum. The whiskey decanter in the study held a lethal dose, administered at table. You claim you examined the body at 10:03. Yet the wound had begun to clot. Death occurred no later than 9:55. You knew he was dead before you entered. You adjusted the note to show the fingerprint. Your alibi is a lie. Frost's spectacles flashed. I was in the hall with Lady Evelyn, Poirot finished, who claims she left the study at 9:30 after a quarrel. Yet the study clock was stopped at 9:48, smashed by the victim's falling hand. She was still inside at 9:48. The quarrel was the murder. She locked the door from outside at 9:50, using the string. Returned the key to the safe at 9:55. Her alibi shatters. Lady Evelyn's diamonds glittered as she shook her head. You cannot prove. I can. Poirot produced a thin copper wire from his pocket. From the study keyhole. Your glove snagged it. Cashmere fibres matched the shawl you wear. The string was silk from your embroidery basket. The child's shoes in the cellar. Your childhood pair kept in the nursery trunk. Size 6, monogrammed EW. Evelyn Winters, Nez Carster. You wore them over stockings to make the barefoot prints. He laid the evidence on the table. Wire, silk, shoes, ledger, photographs. The plan Frost drugs the whiskey. Slade waits in the passage. Lady Evelyn quarrels, distracts. Slade stabs at 9:48. Lady Evelyn locks from outside, pulls string free. Frost discovers the body, adjusts the scene. Clara is lured to witness. The terrace footprints and nursery tableau are misdirection, but the clock, the wire, the shoes, they betray. Frost lunged for the terrace doors. Slade blocked him. Clara began to weep. Lady Evelyn laughed. Wild, broken. Poirot's voice cut through. One detail remains. The second vial of laudanum, found in the nursery grate, half burned. Lady Evelyn intended to destroy all evidence, but the storm delayed the fire. The candles flickered. The frost on the windows thickened. And from the cellar came a sound, a soft, deliberate click, the fuse box resetting. Poirot smiled. The police have arrived. The sled team breached the drifts. The icy darkness thaws. The clock struck 3. 15 chimes. The hour of justice. Chapter 7. The Vault's Secret. The drawing-room fire had shrunk to a single coal, pulsing like a dying heart. Outside, the storm had broken. The moon hung low and bloated, turning the snowfields to mercury. Inside, the candle stubs guttered in their sockets, throwing long shadows that writhed across the panelled walls. The air was sharp with the scent of tallow-cold iron and the faint, sweet residue of laudanum. Hercule Poirot stood before the marble fireplace, his small figure immaculate, despite the night's chaos. In his left hand he held the unsigned will. In his right, a tiny brass key that had been hidden inside the nursery mannequin's hollow head. The suspects sat in a semicircle, each face carved by exhaustion and fear. Lady Evelyn, wrists bound with Poirot's silk handkerchief. Dr. Frost, spectacles fogged. Clara Beaumont, eyes swollen. Victor Slade, scar livid in the moonlight. Le secret du caveau, Poirot announced softly. The vault's secret. Not the safe in the study, no. The true vault, beneath the chapel floor, built in 1853 to hide smuggling gold. Lord Winters rediscovered it last month. He moved the photographs, The ledger's the real will there. This brass key opens it." He crossed to the tapestry depicting a hunting scene, lifted it, and revealed a small iron door set into the wainscoting. The key turned with a reluctant groan. A narrow staircase spiraled downward into darkness. "Follow," he commanded. They descended. The chapel vault was a stone crypt, its air tomb cold. A single oil lamp flickered on a sarcophagus. On the lid lay a steel document box. Poirot opened it with the same key. Inside, a sealed envelope marked "Last Will, A. Winters," a second envelope labelled "Photographs," and a leather pouch heavy with gold sovereigns. Payment promised to Slade. Most damning. A handwritten confession in Lady Evelyn's elegant script. "If discovered, the fault is mine alone. Frost and Slade acted under duress." Poirot read aloud, "I orchestrated the murder to secure my future. The Canadian cousin would sell the estate. I forged the note to Clara, staged the curse, used the child's shoes. Frost supplied the drug, Slade the blade. The icy darkness was my invention, guilt made manifest." Lady Evelyn lunged, but Slade pinned her arms. Frost sagged against the sarcophagus, whispering, "She promised we'd leave for Argentina." Poirot produced a final item. A child's locket, engraved CB 1934. Clara's child did not die. Lord Winters hid the infant with a nurse in York. Proof of paternity, leverage against you all. The vault held the birth certificate. Clara's cry echoed off stone. "My baby! Alive! We, safe, the true heir!" The vault door creaked above. Boots on stairs, village constables, lanterns swinging. The moon vanished behind a cloud. The lamp hissed out. Poirot's voice rang clear. "The vault yields all secrets. The darkness ends at dawn." The clock struck 4, 16 chimes, the hour of revelation. Chapter 8. Deductions in the dark. The chapel vault had become a confessional. Moonlight filtered through a high-slit window, striping the stone floor in silver bars. The oil lamp was dead. Poirot's torch lay on the sarcophagus, its beam fixed on the open document box, like a spotlight on a stage. The air was so cold that every breath plumed white. Hercule Poirot stood with his back to the vault door, small and terrible in his certainty. The brass key glinted between his fingers. Before him, the 4 suspects knelt or slumped against the sarcophagus. Lady Evelyn, Dr. Frost, Clara Beaumont, Victor Slade, each illuminated by the torch's unforgiving glare. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, voice soft yet carrying to the vault's farthest corner, "we have the pieces. Now we assemble the puzzle. Exactement." He lifted the confession. Lady Evelyn admits orchestration, but the hand that held the dagger was not hers. The wound angle, downward, from behind the chair, requires height. Only Monsieur Slade possesses it. The laudanum in the whiskey required medical knowledge. Dr. Frost. The forged note to Clara required access to Lord Winters's stationery. Lady Evelyn. The child's shoes, the mannequin, the gramophone. Lady Evelyn again, a perfect quartet. He laid the confession aside, but one detail troubled Poirot. The ice on the dagger hilt. Not snow from the terrace, too coarse. This was rime ice, formed only in sub-zero air. The vault is the only place cold enough. The dagger was chilled here before the murder, to obscure fingerprints and delay clotting. Lady Evelyn brought it down at 9:30 during the quarrel. Slade retrieved it at 9:47, stabbed at 9:48, returned it here at 9:50. The vault was the staging ground. Poirot opened the leather pouch. Gold sovereigns spilled, 20 pieces. Slade's payment, but the pouch is monogrammed A.W., stolen from the study safe. Lady Evelyn intended to frame Slade for theft, as well as murder. He turned to Frost. "You adjusted the study clock to 9:48 after death. to match the wound, but the pendulum was jammed by the victim's cufflink. Your cufflink, monogrammed HF, found beneath the desk. You were in the study during the murder, holding the string. Frost's spectacles slipped. Non, you were accomplice. Poirot lifted the birth certificate. Clara's child, alive, hidden. Lord Winter's planned to announce it tomorrow, disinheriting all. The vault held proof. You all knew. Clara's voice was a thread. I was to be ruined. Oui, but not murdered. Poirot faced Lady Evelyn. Your final mistake, the locket. You hid it in the mannequin to implicate Clara. But the clasp is broken. Your fingernail marks. You tore it from her neck in the passage at 9:45 when she fled. Lady Evelyn's laugh was hollow. You'll never prove. The vault door creaked. A constable's lantern appeared. Mr. Poirot sled team's here. Poirot smiled. Proof walks in. The darkness yields. The clock struck 5. 17 chimes. The hour of truth. Chapter 9. The chill unmasked. The vault had become a tribunal. 2 constables stood at the iron door, lanterns swinging, their breath clouding in the crypt-cold air. Snowflakes drifted down the spiral stair behind them, harbingers of the world re-entering. The torch on the sarcophagus had dimmed to a sullen red eye, but Poirot needed no light now. The little grey cells blazed. He arranged the evidence on the stone lid, like a card dealer laying out a final hand. Confession, birth certificate, cufflink, locket, chilled dagger, gold pouch, broken clasp, gramophone disc, labelled EW, curse whisper. Each item glinted with accusation. Le moment de vérité, Poirot declared. We unmask the chill. He faced Lady Evelyn first. You, madame, are the architect. At 9:30, you quarrelled in the study, staged. You chilled the dagger in the vault earlier, left it in the passage. You forged the note to Clara, lured her to witness. You held the string while Slade stabbed. You retrieved the photographs, hid the locket, triggered the gramophone. Your motive, the Canadian cousin would sell the estate. You would lose everything. The unsigned will was your salvation. Until Lord Winters planned to sign it tomorrow with the child's birth revealed. Lady Evelyn's diamonds flashed as she tossed her head. Circumstantial. Non. Poirot lifted the gramophone disc. Your voice, recorded yesterday. The icy darkness comes. The speaking tube carried it to the study. The child's shoes, yours, monogrammed EW 1890, found in the trunk. The clasp, your nail polish, Revlon crimson ice. He turned to Frost. You supplied the laudanum, adjusted the clock, planted your cufflink to fake a struggle. Your motive, embezzled clinic funds discovered. Lady Evelyn promised. Argentina. Frost sagged. She said we'd be free. Poirot faced Slade. You stabbed at 9:48, carried the bowl, staged the terrace prints, posed the mannequin. Your motive, revenge for your father and 10,000 in gold. But the pouch was bait. Lady Evelyn planned to frame you for theft. Slade's scar whitened. I was the fool. Finally, Clara. You were the scapegoat. The forged note, the locket torn from your neck, the barefoot prints, all to hang you. But the child lives. Lord Winters's last act was mercy. Clara wept silently. Poirot lifted the confession. Lady Evelyn wrote this before the murder, insurance if caught, but she underestimated the little grey cells. The constable stepped forward. Lady Evelyn lunged for the dagger. Poirot caught her wrist. Assez! Outside, the sky paled to pearl. The storm was spent. Poirot's voice rang clear. The chill is unmasked. Justice dawns. The clock struck 6. 18 chimes. The hour of reckoning. Chapter 10. Dawn's revelation. Dawn crept over the Yorkshire moors like a penitent thief, pale gold light slipping through the manor's high windows and pooling on the chapel flagstones. The vault door stood open. The constables had marched the prisoners up the spiral stair. Lady Evelyn in front, wrists bound with her own silk scarf. Dr. Frost stumbling, spectacles askew. Victor Slade silent, scar livid in the morning glow. Clara Beaumont followed last, clutching the locket that held her child's miniature, alive, waiting in York. Hercule Poirot lingered alone in the crypt. He closed the document box, pocketed the brass key, and extinguished the torch. The sarcophagus lid bore the winter's crest, a wolf rampant on a field of ice. He traced it with a gloved finger. Ainsi finit la nuit, he murmured. Thus ends the night. Upstairs, the great hall was transformed. Sunlight struck the chandelier, scattering prisms across the marble. The study door stood ajar. The blood had been covered with a dust sheet, the dagger removed to evidence. The blizzard's fury was now only a memory in the dripping eaves and the soft plop of melting snow from the roof. Poirot assembled the household one final time. Clara, the maids, the constables, even the sled team dogs panting by the fire. He stood on the hearthrug, overcoat unbuttoned, moustache gleaming like polished ebony. Mes amis, he began, the icy darkness was never a curse. It was cupidity, greed cloaked in superstition. Lord Winter's hoarded wealth and secrets, his killers hoarded resentment, but secrets, like snow, melt in the light of truth. He laid the timeline bare. Lady Evelyn quarrels, staged, Chill's dagger in vault. Clara summoned by forged note, witnesses argument in passage. Slade takes silver bowl, retrieves dagger. Stabs Lord Winters. Frost holds string. Lady Evelyn locks door from outside, triggers gramophone whisper. Returns key, plants cufflink, tears locket from Clara. Frost discovers body, adjusts clock. Every detail, ice, footprints, child's shoes, mannequin, designed to conjure a ghost. But ghosts leave no nail polish, no monogrammed gold, no broken clasps. He turned to Clara. Your child inherits. The Canadian cousin is disinherited. The estate is yours, administered until the boy is of age. Clara's tears fell on the locket. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. Lady Evelyn, from the doorway, laughed once, sharp, final. You think you've won, little man. The darkness lives in every heart. It will claim you too. Poirot's smile was gentle. Non, madame. The little grey cells are proof against darkness. They are the dawn. The constables led her away. Frost followed, head bowed. Slade paused at the threshold, looked back. My father, would he have been proud? Poirot considered. He would have been free. The valet nodded once and was gone. Outside, the sled team waited. The snow had settled into gentle hills. The road to the village was passable. Poirot donned his hat, stepped into the crisp morning. The manor stood behind him, windows blazing with reflected sun, the wolf crest glinting on the gate. He paused, breathed deep. Adieu, Winter's Manor, the ice has broken. The clock struck 7. 19 chimes, the hour of renewal.